You're listening to Mike. For more episodes or to connect with the show with comments, ideas, or to be a guest, go to www.psychwithmike.com. Follow the show on Twitter @PsychWithMike or like the Facebook page @PsychWithMike. Now,
welcome in the Psych with Mike Library. This is Dr. Michael Mahan, and I am here with my very good friend and colleague, Mr. Brett Newcomb.
I appreciate your professionalism. Thank you.
Okay, well, I'm just trying to have your back.
Yeah.
So, you took copious notes today before we started, and I am just wondering what all that was about.
So, studies...
You have a page of handwritten notes that you took before we started today.
Studies indicate that you retain things in your memory better that you have written down.
Multimodal learning.
There you go. So, in the hopes that I could remember this crap till the end of the conversation, I wrote it down.
You sometimes don't like the topics that I come up with. Oh, so this is a personal diatribe.
Well, there you go. Diatribe all over me again.
So somebody had written in the comments of one of the YouTube, I don't even remember what show it was. I'm here to learn. Stop fussing around. Stop having your good, funny, indulgent time for the first 4 or 5 minutes. Yeah. And I'm like, well, first off, you don't have to listen to this.
Skip the first 5 minutes and get to the meat in that coconut.
But they're all like, oh, it's so educational. The material is so good. You guys are so good. But I just can't stand that. Well, then I don't know what to tell you.
Well, I think it's not telling them, it's hearing them.
Yeah.
I hear your concerns.
Oops. I don't know if that...
I don't want to say that?
I don't know if that flies. I may have to bleep that.
Why?
Because I think that's an FCC violation.
Oh, no. I don't have a Class 2 license. Do you have one?
Well, I don't want to get taken off the air.
There you go.
So that's I want to comply with whatever the...
Fornicate you very much?
I'll have to... I'll bleep that. I'll bleep that. That'll be fine.
Works for me.
If I remember.
Yeah.
I have to...
I hope you do.
I have to make a note.
It could be a problem.
Yeah. So, I would say that you are one of the two most genuinely confident people that I've ever met. And as a therapist, I think that I have the capacity of being able to discern between what's genuine, sincere confidence and what's bravado.
Yeah.
And I would say that you are one of the two most confident people that I've ever met. And what I am wondering is, do you feel that way?
Well, 3 things occur to me when you say that. Okay. One is you don't have a wide spectrum of contacts. So for you
You're
to say
saying that people don't like me very much?
No, I wasn't saying that.
No. I thought you said that I don't have very many friends.
Well, that's one thing that occurs to me as an explanation for why you would say that.
Yeah.
But the other thing is, I think I probably am very confident in some domains. I'm less confident in other domains. Mm-hmm. When I get into those situations, I wouldn't say I was confident at all.
Well, okay.
But in the areas where I feel self-confident, I would say I'm extremely self-confident.
Yes. And what I would say is areas where you don't feel very confident,
I tend to avoid.
You are reticent. Yes, you are.
Agree that I can.
Like I would be willing to throw myself off the cliff into an experience that I didn't know very much about, in the hopes that would generate some, positive.
If I live through this, I hope it turns out to be good.
Yeah, and I don't think you're as likely to do that.
That's not my style.
But in the things that you feel confident about, I think you are very, very securely confident, not in an...
Well, that's good. I mean, I'm glad you perceive it that way.
Yeah. So, in the article that accompanies this in the show notes, they talk about these phrases. I think there's 11 phrases.
There are. According to my notes, there are 11 phrases.
Oh, you took copious notes.
Yeah.
And what I would argue is that this article is really just about basic foundational cognitive psychology. Like, these are self-statements that would have been originally identified by Albert Ellis back in the 1960s, and that the whole foundation of cognitive psychology is that you build up this nest of autonomic self-talk that you're not even aware of, that plays in your brain, and that if you can become better aware of that and tweak it, it can actually profoundly change your perspective, which I think is 100% true. And these are 11 really good phrases that if you look at and think about, that if you start to tweak these in a more neutral or even positive way, it can really profoundly change your perspective.
So there was a Frenchman in the 1930s who became famous. His name was Émile Coué, and he became famous for the phrase, "I'm getting better and better every day in every way." I think what I would say in response to everything that you just said is it has to do with the language that you hear. And in doing therapy with clients, one of the things that I would regularly attempt to do is encourage them to hear the language they use and to consider whether or not they could substitute different words for those words. Instead of hearing in their head the verbiage, "I must do this," "I should
the should,
do this,"
yeah.
I encourage them to think, "I will do this," or "I won't do this," as an indication of personal power. Not if I hear a should or a must, it implies to my psyche that I'm bound by some other stricture to behave or speak in this way. But if I can take ownership of that, then I have the responsibility to choose my own path. That also comes with freedom and a sense of freedom. So if I can say, "I will do this," or "I won't do that," and take ownership of that, then I don't carry around the baggage of the shoulds and the implied penalties of bad fate, bad cess, bad outcomes. That, I mean, I may make a mistake. I may fail this time. I may have done that poorly. Next time life offers me that opportunity, I hope to have learned from that and tried to do it differently.
Right.
But I don't subtotal my entire universe experience to say I'm a failure.
Yeah, and one of the this is a corollary to that I've often used in therapy, and that is that the freest person in the world is the person with the most responsibility.
Well, I don't know about that. I mean, that's a big stretch for me. I'm just thinking personally.
But when you say you know the choice between I should and I will or I won't is about freedom, I agree with that.
Right.
But that requires a certain amount of personal responsibility. So in the lives that we live,
I follow your logic. I just don't know that I agree with your conclusion. I used to give a lot of speeches. I've probably given thousands of speeches to audiences.
Three. You gave
from
three.
A room full of people to thousands of people.
Yeah.
Not long ago, I was invited back to my university to give a speech, where I went to school in the 60s.
Is it still there?
It's still there. It's still going on. One of the things that's still there, when I was a student there, we started a model United Nations. We invited students from other schools to come, and we created a pretend UN, and they took roles of countries, and they did whatever they did.
Was that the program that Bill Clinton was in?
No, that was Boy State.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
At any rate, so we started this the year that I was a junior, and I was the first Secretary General of the Model UN. And then when I was a senior, I was the second Secretary General of the Model UN. And then I graduated and went away and lived my life. 50 years have gone by. And they reached out to me and said, "This is our 50th anniversary session. We want you to come and give us a speech." So I went down to give them
because
a
it's become a model internationally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, anyway.
Why would you not
So I gave this speech.
be proud of that?
Because I didn't do a good job.
No.
When I finished and I walked off the stage, I talked to my wife who was there, and I said, "That may be the worst speech I've ever given." And she was trying to reassure me. But in reality, I didn't do a good job. And I felt bad about it. Not bad enough to give them back their money, but I felt like I didn't do what I should have done.
So why?
I don't know. I don't know. I just know that I didn't do a good job.
So
what do I
the
want to learn
program,
from that?
but the program did become internationally recognized, and I think you should be proud of that.
Oh, I am. But that's because of things that other people did over a 50-year period. I just was there at the beginning.
Okay.
So you can't take ownership of what doesn't belong to you.
Well, okay,
And
but
if
but
you're
you
going to
can
have
also
self-confidence, you got to say, okay.
But you can
what are
also
my strengths and
minimize
weaknesses?
your participation.
All I'm saying is
Yeah.
I gave a bad speech.
Yeah, okay.
I wish that I had given a better speech. My outtake for that is that the next time I give a speech, I will do a better job. I will
But
learn.
you've given thousands
Yeah.
of speeches,
And
so
and
why was
some
that
of them,
one the
Some
one?
of them weren't very good. Lots of them were awesome. Mm-hmm. I'm a good public speaker. People pay me good money to come and give speeches.
And there are some times where the audience has something.
It's
to do
all
with
their
that.
fault. Yeah, they
No,
weren't
but it's-
smart enough to
it's-
appreciate me.
But it is true. If there's stuff going on, I've spoken in some churches where you're getting a really negative vibe, and it's hard to really feel good about what you're doing.
That's one of the skills of a good public speaker is you can read the audience, and then you get energy from reading the audience. And if the audience is flat and rejecting you,
You try and
don't get
adapt.
good energy.
Yeah.
Hopefully you can try a couple different approaches to the delivery. But sometimes the message is not one they're prepared to hear. Mm-hmm. But at any rate, there are skills involved in being a speaker, and I know that I have those skills. I'm also aware that sometimes I don't do a good job. Mm-hmm. So how does that then come into this conversation about being self-confident?
Well, we're talking about being confident, not
Yeah.
being perfect.
Right. I am confident. And if you were to hire me today to give a speech, I'd be confident that I could do a good job.
And that experience didn't destroy your confidence in yourself
exactly.
as a
I
public
don't say
speaker.
I'm a failure as a public speaker because I had one bad experience.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And this is something that we used to talk about all the time when we were actively doing speeches regularly as a part of what we did as consultants. We would always give the ubiquitous feedback handout, and if you've got, just for round numbers, 100 people that you're giving a speech to, you're going to have
Well, you're going to have 10
70
of them that
people
come back and say, the room was cold.
Right.
The seats are hard. Which has nothing to do with your speech. I mean, it has nothing to do that you have any control over. You're hired to come in and talk. So you're getting 10 of them. You're going to get 60 that say, great job, really learned a lot, really enjoyed it, you're really good. And you're going to have 10 that say, you're stupid. I can't believe that people pay you money.
Right.
As a speaker, the only 10 you're going to hear are the negative ones.
Right.
You're going to read those, and they're going to jump off. You're going to carry that to bed with you. I can't believe that this person got this out of what I said. How can I do that differently? What do I need to learn? How can it's painful.
But I would argue that's an analogy for most people in life, is that most of us hear the negative message. Now, I'd say that is evolutionarily developmental, that when we were hunter-gatherers, that negative information kept you alive, positive information got you dead, right? So if you
but you got to reality test it.
But if you see a wounded animal running across the forest floor, that tells you a predator's nearby. So now you better be wary. If you're watching a butterfly light on a tree, that's might be beautiful, but now you're going to die. And so we are much more in tune. Negative messages
stay away from butterflies.
Are survival messages. And that's why we pay attention to them.
Destructive messages too.
Well, sure they can.
Your negative, your message is, I can't do this. I was told I was too stupid to go to college. If I had listened to those messages, I would not have gone to college.
Right.
If you allow others to define your reality, they will.
But we also know that it takes 7 positive statements, or 5, depending on what study you're looking at, to equal the weight of a single negative message. So people are much more likely to pay attention to and internalize negative messaging. The point being that if you are going to change the way that you listen to your own internal dialogue, not only are you going to have to identify it, which is difficult, but you're going to have to take responsibility for actively changing that message, and you're going to have to do that a lot, because it's going to take a lot of that positive messaging to overwhelm the negative information that you're going to get vicariously.
Let's stay with our conversation example.
Yeah.
So you give a speech at a church.
Okay, let's run to our break and then we'll...
All right.
You know, if you've gotten this far into the show, then obviously you find the show to be worthwhile, beneficial, maybe even helpful. And so I just wanted to say, if you've gotten this far into the show and you want to help us out, even if you don't want to help us out, just do it anyway. Go to Apple Podcasts and rate us and leave a review. That is super helpful. Subscribe to the show on YouTube and hit the bell icon so that you get notifications when new shows drop. That stuff is really, really helpful for us. And I know that Mr. Brett agrees.
Absolutely. Reviews are positive. Positive reviews are more positive, but negative ones are as well, because it helps you decide how to focus and how whatever you're intending to say is being heard.
And the secret is the algorithm doesn't care whether the review's positive or negative.
As our friend Mike Norton says regularly, feedback is a gift.
If it's Friday, it's Psych with Mike. Okay, we're back, and so we're giving a speech in a church.
You give a speech in church, and you get negative vibrations. So then you go home and you think, oh, that didn't go well. Wow, must not be a good public speaker. Or you think, that didn't go well. Maybe I shouldn't give speeches to Baptists. Mm-hmm. Maybe I shouldn't give speeches at churches. Maybe I should give them somewhere else. I'll go to the circus and give a speech. You can assume that you are all bad and not a good speaker, and you shouldn't try that. Or you can assume maybe not in this environment, maybe not on this topic, maybe not this audience, but I still have these skills. I can use them somewhere else. So part of it is the reality testing and feedback from people that you do trust to say, am I totally off base here to try to do this, and listen to them and incorporate their feedback with the experiential feedback that you had. And it's not one trial learning. Mm-hmm. So I go and give a speech, as I said I did at my university. It didn't go well. In my assessment, I felt bad about it. But I got feedback from a couple of people that were there, and they didn't notice it was so bad the way that I thought that it was. Mm-hmm. They thought it was adequate, which to me is bad.
Yeah.
But at any rate, I did not do an all or nothing. It wasn't one trial learning of, well, I can't give speeches. Mm-hmm. I need to go away. I remember spending years as a classroom teacher. Every school district in the known universe, at the beginning of the school year, wants to hire an outside speaker to come in and do a rah-rah, we're going to have a great year this year. This is what we need how we're going to be impactful in the lives of these kids. God bless us. As a teacher, I have to sit and listen to that, and I would get so frustrated when they were poor speakers, when they didn't use grammatically correct English, when they didn't finish their thoughts, when they didn't make their points, all kinds of critical analyses of these speakers. And I always said, I can do that better. Why won't my own school district hire me to get up there and do the Back to the Future speech?
Because they hire outside.
They hire outside
people.
that
that are quote respected more.
Whoever, whatever. Anyway.
Don't you know that I'd never want to be a member of a club that would accept me as a member?
Groucho Marx. Yeah. So, you have to have, is one of the things you're trained, you have to have an understanding of your audience.
But you also have to resist those logical fallacies. The one trial learning is a logical fallacy. But
if I'm hired by a school district to go in and talk to the teachers, I need to know something about who those teachers are and what the school district wants me to say to them, and anticipate, an anticipatory set, an educational term, what are their reactions going to be? How do I reach them? How do I use examples? How do I use phraseology? What points do I make to reach them with my message? You have to think about that as you construct your message. Then you have to think about the delivery mechanics. Mm-hmm. How do I give this speech? Do I stand behind the podium? Do I use my notes? Do I hope, you learn in speech class to, put your notes, not look down like this and talk down. Mm-hmm. Different things. So those are, you incorporate all those factors. And then for this conversation, you have to have self-confidence. Mm-hmm. I know I can do this. Mm-hmm. I'm going to walk in there and I'm going to do this. And if it doesn't go well, then you have to say, well, I knew that not do this well this time.
So, well, okay. So there always has to be a first time, though, right?
Yeah.
And so what do you do that first time?
Then you say, well, I'm going to get a factory job. I can always go back to that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was successful in the bicycle factory.
Do you think that confidence is innate or learned?
Ooh. Can I say both? Because I think as a small child, you're born with.
No, I think it is both. Yeah, you can absolutely say both.
You learn from life experiences. You learn from reinforcement how to veer, shift, so that you seek out successful experiences.
Yeah, and I mean, I could go into in minute detail the first three stages of development according to Jean Piaget or Erik Erikson, and
not Piaget. You're not Piagetian.
I would incorporate some of Piaget's. So Piaget was cognitive and Erikson was psychosocial. And so those first three stages of Erikson's development in the psychosocial realm, talking about whether or not you internalize security, is a big part of whether or not you're going to feel innately confident. But even if, because I don't think that I did that well, from my family of origin, and even though that security wasn't innately ingrained in me, as a child, I have been able to develop good levels of confidence, especially in things like public speaking, through learned experience.
Yeah, learned experience matters, but so does the interpretive surround. Mm-hmm. So if I'm a small child and I walk up to a fence and there's a dog on the other side of the fence and it's snapping and growling, I put my hand through the fence and it bites me. Do I learn all by myself? Dogs are dangerous, stay away from them. Mm-hmm. Fences don't work. My hand tastes good. I mean, there are a lot of ways to interpret the results.
I'm delicious dog food.
Damn right. So somebody has to come along and say, okay, here's what we want you to learn from this. Mm-hmm. One, be terrified of dogs. Never trust dogs. Mm-hmm. If dogs are signaling, don't touch me, don't touch them. If they're signaling, it's okay. It's okay. So learn to read the signals.
Well, but not only that, but sometimes the signaling is dependent on the experience of that other person, right? So if you get bitten and then the adult standing there says, "What the heck do you think you're doing? How stupid are you?" Yeah. Well, then you've learned one message. If that adult grabs you and says, "Oh my gosh, you're fine. It's fine. It's fine," then you've interpreted a different message.
Yeah. Well, we used to talk to parents about that a lot. 2-year-old stumbles and falls, and grandma's there, and she goes, "Oh, baby," and he learns to cry. Yeah. You watch them; they get up from falling, they look around, read the audience. How am I supposed to respond to that?
Yeah.
And if everybody's going, "Oh my God," then they know they had a crisis, and they start to cry, and then they have to be picked up and consoled and cajoled. But if you say, "Oh, shake it off, Elmo," then or laugh and go, "That was funny," then they do pratfalls for an hour and a half, because they don't know funny once. Right. That's another thing you have to teach them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, good luck with that. Yeah. You're going to be invested in teaching them that lesson for a long time, because that has to do with the whole cognitive development. But so the environment has a significant role to play in reinforcement until you get to the point where you, as an individual, should be able to take that process over for yourself.
Well, but also it depends on the severity of the experience.
Yeah, because it
can be one trial learning if it's traumatic enough.
If it's traumatic, right? That's what post-traumatic stress disorder would say. But even if it isn't traumatic enough, but it is persistent and consistent over time, you can still have that similar kind of post-traumatic stress reaction. But what I'm saying is that when you get to a point as a pre-adolescent or adolescent, and now you can come to my office and I can say to you, let's rationally kind of unpack this, then you can start to take responsibility for some of that. You may not be responsible for what happened to you when you were 3, but you are responsible for what happens to you and whether or not you remain a victim of that when you become 16 or 17.
But there also are a range of possibilities to be considered. Our friend Mike Norton is teaching me to play pickleball.
Not good.
I don't anticipate that I will ever be Olympic caliber pickleball player. But I can have fun. I may win the game. I may lose the game.
Against Mike, you'll always lose.
Exactly. So do I? It's not one trial learning. It's a range of interpreting experience.
Michael knows that we love him, but he is an extremely competitive individual.
And his motor never stops.
Yeah. So
to me, it's like, I might could have gotten that, but I'm not running that hard to go get it.
Exactly.
Let's just count that point for you.
This game isn't that important to me.
But it is to him.
Yeah.
No, but so what? My point is, it's not an all or nothing gradation, and you do learn, but you also factor in your desire, your expected outcomes. What am I trying to get out of this?
Yeah.
I remember giving a speech one time to a trucking firm over in Illinois. They hired me for their annual company meeting to talk to the staff. And one of the things that I suggested to them is they're all self-employed.
Yeah.
Even if they're union members, even if they're mechanics, even if they're truck drivers, even if they're secretaries, they're self-employed. Technically, they work for the company, writes them a paycheck. I said, but your quality of experience when you come to work is defined by you, the attitude that you bring to the table, what you think you can learn, what you think you can do. I don't think I ever go to a meeting that I don't think is my meeting. I mean, I go into a meeting, even if I'm a member of the audience, I ask myself, what am I doing here? Why am I here? What do I want to get out of this? Well, maybe I just want to get the social benefit of being in the group and having everybody afterwards say, well, that was good or bad or whatever, but just fitting in. Maybe it's the experience of saying, I'm smarter than you are. I'll ask you a question you can't answer, and then I'll try to do that. Maybe it's the experience of making you laugh, of saying, oh, that guy's really funny. I have an agenda when I go to those meetings, and then I can choose. Maybe my agenda is to keep you from reaching your agenda. So I have a sense of ownership. I have a sense of self-confidence. When I go into a meeting, I can not control, but I can impact what I get out of it.
So earlier I had said that one of my axioms is that the freest person in the world is the person with the most responsibility. And you said, oh, I don't know if I agree with that. But then I hear you saying this, and that sounds, I'm trying to understand what's the difference.
Lying.
No. But I'm trying to understand what would you say is the nuanced difference between what you just said is it's my meeting. I'm taking responsibility for how I'm going into that.
And how what I'm going to try to get out of it.
Yeah. How is that different than what I was saying? Is there a difference?
I think it's in the interpretation of the word responsibility.
Okay.
I would say I'm responsible for me, for my participation, for my outcome.
Yeah, okay.
I'm not necessarily responsible for what happens in the universe.
Yeah, well, I would say that's what I would say also. I don't think that I'm suggesting that people should be able to control the machinations of the cosmos. But so my, feeling has always been that in the life that we lived, because we always set our own schedule and everything, I would tell people all the time, I'm the freest person you know. I have the financial means to get on an airplane and go anywhere I want. I have a passport. I don't have to answer to anybody. I can buy a ticket and go today, but I never do that because I've made a commitment to my clients.
It's your choice, your ownership.
Yeah. And so even though I'm free to do those things, I am responsible for acting in a certain way.
Or you've made hierarchical commitments. I used to ask you, hey, Mike, let's go skiing for a week. And you say, I have to ask my wife. I said, well, I thought you were free. I thought you could choose to go.
Yeah.
Well, I can, but I have to ask my wife. So there's a hierarchical level of freedom to which you have bound yourself.
Yeah.
Or been bound.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Whichever.
Yeah, whichever.
And maybe been bound but chose to bind myself too.
Just say, I love being bound this way. Yeah, these are my favorite bindings. Yeah.
So before we close this out, I do want to say, go to the article and read these things. There's nothing that is wrong about what's in this article. This article is basic cognitive psychology. And if you look at
changing the script in your head.
Yes. Yeah. The phrases that they have and the suggested ways that they have for changing those phrases, a lot of times it's only one word. from I should do something to I will or won't do something.
I could have been a contender.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's so incredibly powerful. But again, you're never going to successfully change that self-talk language because you do it one time. And that's what a lot of my clients, they'll say, oh yeah, I'm trying to change my self-talk, but they don't do it until they're in distress. And then they try and do it a couple of times, and that's not going to be effective. You have to change
they don't do it realistically
all the time.
Yeah. They have to, it's easy to say, well, I could be a pilot. Mm-hmm. Maybe I could be a pilot. I could try to find out. I have never tried. I don't know. I had a client that wanted to be a surgeon when he grew up. He was injured, had a brain injury. He said, I can't be a doctor because I can't be a surgeon. And I had conversations with him about there are other kinds of doctors. Mm-hmm. You may not be able to be a surgeon because you have a motor control issue now that you didn't have before. But you still have a brain that works, and you can still learn to be a doctor, and you can be a different kind of doctor if you open yourself to that possibility. Or you could choose another path, say, I'm going to be a musician or whatever. He went on to be a doctor, but he wasn't a surgeon, which was his intended modality in the beginning.
And a lot of times that's what we are practicing in therapy when we're doing cognitive therapy is identification of those kinds of self-talk messages that are limiting your potential choices. So when you say, I can't be a doctor, if you could say, I can be any doctor I want except a surgeon, right? That's very different than I can't be a doctor.
I wanted to be a brain surgeon, but I became a proctologist.
Yeah, well, I'd say it's the same thing.
Yeah.
For the most part.
That's what my wife said, get your head.
Right.
Anyway.
But so if you need help trying to identify or change that self-talk, we would strongly encourage that you find somebody who is qualified to do cognitive behavioral therapy and that you engage in that process at least for a time that it takes you to feel like you're proficient. Because it's not just about reading this article and saying, yes, these phrases, I say these things to myself, probably even unconsciously, and then saying, okay, I'm going to try and do that differently. You really have to practice that.
I should have said that differently.
Yeah. The best way to do that is with a qualified third-party professional.
I never get this right.
Yeah.
I always screw this up. Yeah.
But if you have any questions about this of a general nature, you can contact us at psychwithmike.com. We will try and give you any feedback that we can. But for this issue, it's really important. Consistency is key, as it is with a lot of things. But in this issue, specifically, consistency is essential. You have to identify that negative self-talk, and you have to engage in the alternative process frequently enough that that starts to become habituated. And that's something that you can do. Anybody can do that. Anybody can do that. But it does take practice. So if you have any questions about that, get us at psychwithmike.com. Find us on the YouTubes at Psych with Mike and subscribe to the show there. Go to Apple Podcast at Psych with Mike and give us a rating and a review. That helps other people find the show, which is super beneficial for us. And the music that appears in Psych with Mike is written and performed by Mr. Benjamin DeClue. And if it's Friday, it's Psych with Mike.